The Unitarian Universalist Church is located at 490 Aguajita Road on the east side of Highway 1 at the Highway 68 exit to Pacific Grove in the opposite direction to Pacific Grove. Sunday services are at 10:30 and everyone is welcome. You can also find us at uucmp.org. Welcoming all, we worship together with loving hearts and open minds, promoting peace, equality, respect for the earth, questioning, reflecting, learning, leading. We change ourselves as we change the world.
We are a congregation that welcomes everyone, regardless of your age, your race, your sexual preferences, your political beliefs, your religious beliefs. We want you to join us in community. Our purpose is to change our own lives as we work to improve what happens in the world. I also want to say welcome to a violinist today. Her name is Amalia Diaz, and she will be accompanied by our own Camille Harrison. I'm privileged to have Reverend Axel Gehrman here, as are you, and today's worship associate is Sarah Hardgrave. There's lots of ways that this church offers us to be involved, and so I'd like to share some of them with you now. Not in your order of service, not in the announcement, is an interfaith prayer vigil in support of Pope Francis's address to the Congress on Thursday. The vigil will be on this coming Wednesday from 5:30 to 6:30 at Windows on the Bay in Monterey. We will offer prayerful support of Francis's call for the eradication of poverty, responding with compassion to the plight of refugees and immigrants, and of course the historic environmental globalization encyclical with its call to action in response to climate change. Both Ms. McCarthy and Karen Araujo of our social justice group can tell you more, and they're both here today. We're celebrating our building today. I see some faces that had a lot to do with it in the crowd today, and I'm glad you're here. You all did. Everyone who has pledged meant that this could happen. Thank you.
Readings for our call to worship today. Both I pulled from a book called The Transition Handbook, From Oil Dependency to Local Resilience. When we build, let us think that we build forever. Let it not be for our present delight, nor for the present use alone. Let it be such work as our descendants will thank us. And let us think, as we lay stone on stone, that a time will come when those stones will be held sacred, because our hands will have touched them. And that men will say, as they look upon the labor and wrought substance of them, "See, this our fathers did for us." For indeed, the greatest glory of a building is not in its stones, nor in its gold. Its glory is in its age, and in that deep sense of voicefulness, or stern watching, of mysterious sympathy, nay, even of approval or condemnation, which we feel in walls that have long been washed by the passing waves of humanity. It is in that golden strain of time that we are to look for the real light and color and preciousness of architecture. That's from John Ruskin. And from Henry David Thoreau, "If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put foundations under them." And if you would please stand as you are willing and able to join in singing our first hymn of the day, number 1008 in your teal hymn book, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
Together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love.
Unite this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world.
Okay, does the microphone work? Yes. We believe in miracles. Okay, kids, have any of you ever heard the story called The Three Little Pigs? Of course you have. Okay. This is not that story. This is the story of the three little wolves and the big bad pig. Do you like it?
Of course I do.
Okay, they like it, they know it. The others don't know the story yet, so I'll read it to everybody. This is how it goes. Once upon a time, there were three cuddly little wolves with soft fur and fluffy tails who lived with their mother. One day, the mother called the three little wolves around her and said, "My children, it's time for you to go out into the world. Go and build a house for yourselves, but beware of the big bad pig." "Don't worry, Mother, we'll watch out for him," said the three little wolves, and they set off. Soon they met a kangaroo who was pushing a wheelbarrow full of red and yellow bricks. "Please, will you give us some of your bricks?" asked the three little wolves. "Certainly," said the kangaroo, and she gave them lots of red and yellow bricks, and so the three little wolves built themselves a house of bricks. Look at that. The very next day, the big bad pig came prowling down the road and saw the house of bricks that the little wolves had built. The three little wolves were playing croquet in the garden when they saw the big bad pig coming. They ran inside the house and locked the door. The pig knocked on the door and grunted, little wolves, let me come in." "No, no, no," said the three little wolves. "By the hair on our chinny chin chins, we'll not let you in." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down," said the pig. So he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, but the house did not fall down. But the pig was not called big and bad for nothing. He went and fetched his sledgehammer, and he knocked the house down. The three little wolves just only managed barely to escape before the bricks crumbled, and they were very frightened indeed. "We shall have to build a stronger house," they said. Just then they saw a beaver who was mixing concrete in a concrete mixer. "Please, will you give us some of your concrete?" asked the three little wolves. "Certainly," said the beaver, and he gave them buckets and buckets full of messy, slurry concrete, so the three little wolves built themselves a house of concrete. No sooner had they finished than the big bad pig came prowling down the road, saw the house of concrete that they'd built. They were playing in the garden when they saw the big bad pig coming. They ran inside their house and shut the door. The pig rang the bell, said, "Little frightened wolves, let me come in." "No, no, no," said the three little wolves. "By the hair on our chinny chin chins, we'll not let you in." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow the house down," said the pig. So he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed. But that house did not fall down. But the pig wasn't called big and bad for nothing. He went and fetched his pneumatic drill, and he smashed the house down. The three little wolves managed to escape, but their chinny chin chins were trembling and trembling and trembling. "We shall build an even stronger house," they said, because they were determined. Just then they saw a truck coming along the road carrying barbed wire, iron bars, armor plates, and heavy metal padlocks. "Please, will you give us some of your stuff?" they said to the rhinoceros who was driving the truck. "Sure," said the rhinoceros. So the little wolves built themselves an extremely strong house. It was the strongest, securest house that one could possibly imagine. They felt absolutely absolutely safe. The next day, the big bad pig came prowling around as usual. The little wolves were playing hopscotch in the garden. They ran inside their house. They bolted the door and locked all 37 padlocks. The pig dialed the video entrance phone and said, "Little frightened wolves with trembling chins, let me come in." No, said the little wolves. "By the hair on our chinny chin chins, we will not let you in. Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." So he huffed and he puffed and he puffed his huff. The house did not fall down, but he wasn't called big and bad for nothing. He brought some dynamite, laid it against the house, lit the fuse, and kerplooey! The little wolves just managed to escape with their fluffy tails scorched. "Something must be wrong with our building materials," they said. "We have to try something different." But what? At that moment, they saw a flamingo coming along, pushing a wheelbarrow full of flowers. "Please, will you give us some flowers?" they asked. "With pleasure," said the flamingo. He gave them lots of flowers, and so they built a house of flowers. One wall was of marigolds, one of daffodils, one of pink roses, and one of cherry blossoms. The ceiling was made of sunflowers, and the floor was a carpet of daisies. The next day, the big bad pig came prowling around, saw the house of flowers, and he rang the bluebell at the door and said, "Little frightened wolves with trembling chins and scorched tails, let me come in." No, said the three little wolves. "By the hair on our chinny chin chins, we will not let you in. Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." But as the pig took a deep breath, ready to huff and puff, he smelled the soft scent of flowers. It was fantastic. And because the scent was so lovely, the pig took another breath and then another. He sniffed deeper and deeper until he was quite filled with the fragrant scent. His heart grew tender, and he realized how terrible he'd been. Right then, he decided to become a big, good pig, and he started to sing and dance the tarantella. At first, the three little wolves were a bit worried it might be a trick, but they soon realized that the pig truly had changed. So they came running out of the house, and they started playing games together. And when they were all tired, they invited the pig into the house. They offered him tea and strawberries and asked him to stay with them as long as he wanted. The pig accepted, and they all lived happily together ever after. Now please join in singing our children off to their classes.
There is a place in my childhood, a building that stands out in my mind. I can imagine the foyer with a bulletin board announcing various community events. There was an interior hallway that led to offices and meeting rooms. I can see the slick linoleum on the hallway floor and the slight ramp near the entrance that was the perfect surface for racing around on my roller skates. The largest space was occupied by the Natural Foods Co-op. I had to laugh when I told my mom that I can distinctly remember how the building smelled, and she said it was probably the open vats of tofu. I asked her what this place was called, and she said it was simply called the Community Building. This is a place where my mom took me with her while she attended meetings and organized peaceful protests and planned to get out the vote. One office was occupied by the anti-nuclear group, formed in protest to what was then a proposed nuclear waste storage facility in southern New Mexico, and against the nuclear weapons industry at the military industrial complexes at Los Alamos and Sandia National Labs. Another office was the original location of the Albuquerque Peace and Justice Center. It was the late 1970s and 80s, and the Vietnam War was not such a distant memory that my parents and their comrades had great faith that nonviolent actions and civil disobedience could affect major social change. This building was not a church or a place of worship. It was a place where I learned values and formed belief systems that led to my choice to join the Unitarian Universalists as an adult. It was a place of social justice. There, I learned about the lack of equality in our world and the ongoing struggle for human rights. It was a place where I saw democracy in action. There, I learned that not all in power speak on behalf of the greater good and the importance of participating in our own governance. It was a place where I learned a core value about the importance of giving time and energy to serve the community at large. There, I learned that collectively we can achieve much more than individually. When I was around 10 or 11, the community building was sold and a retail shopping center put in its place. I remember heated conversations at the dinner table that the co-op might be selling out to corporate interests and catering to the hippies turned yuppies. My mom says the Peace and Justice Center still has the same phone number today that she had set up in that community building. Even though I was too young to really appreciate that all that had gone on there, I remember a palpable sense of loss when that building was torn down. But here, now, today, we are celebrating the expansion of this building, the creation of new space for love and justice. This is a community building. No one is going to tear this place down, and certainly it's never going to be replaced by a Walgreens. UUCMP fills an important function here on the Monterey Peninsula. As we celebrate today as a congregation, let's remember that the purpose of the building project was never for the building itself. The purpose was to create a container for all the good work and community building that we do here. So may it be. And if you could please join in singing the next hymn. Here on the Paths of Every Day, it's in your gray hymnal, number 312.
And now please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation, guided by the words of Dorothy Mae Emerson. Universal Spirit of love within each one of us, whose power reaches to the stars, whose love connects us one to another and to all creation. We are one. We cry out with the pain of this broken world and ask, Why? With all our capacity for love, why can't we wrap this world in love and bring healing? We confess that we're not always able to express the love we know is inside us. We feel constricted and hesitant, afraid that our love will be rejected or misused. May we dare to let go of fear so we can move on, opening our hearts to one another. We hope for empowerment that we may learn to love more fully. Let our love shine forth from this sacred place that others may know that here they will find freedom, acceptance, community, justice, and love. May we feel the love inside us, connecting with the love in each other and with the stars. So be it. And now we will receive the morning's offering, which today will support the work of the Gathering Place for Women. Thank you.
Our first reading is by the El Salvadoran Archbishop Oscar Romero, who was an outspoken advocate for the poor and the persecuted, a social activist and a martyr for justice. In this piece, he describes the work of religious community. It is entitled, Prophets of a Future Not Our Own. This is what we are about. We plant seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces effects beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for God's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future not our own.
Our second and final reading this morning is by the Unitarian Universalist minister Kenneth Patton, who prolific author known for his distinct version of religious humanism and naturalism. In this piece, he describes the purpose of our religious meeting house. He writes, "This house is for the ingathering of nature and human nature. It is a house of friendships, a haven in trouble, an open room for the encouragement of our struggle. It is a house of freedom, guarding the dignity and worth of every person. It offers a platform for the free voice, for declaring, both in times of security and danger, the full, undivided conflict of opinion. It is a house of truth-seeking, where scientists can encourage devotion to their quest, where mystics can abide in a community of searchers. It is a house of art, adorning its celebrations with melodies and handiwork. It is a house of prophecy, outrunning times past and times present with visions of growth and progress. This house is the cradle for our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavor." Once upon a time, there were 3 bricklayers working side by side at a construction site. A curious child walking by stopped and watched what they were doing. Each of them held a trowel in one hand and scooped up mortar from a bucket and expertly slapped it on a row of bricks in front of them, and then with the other hand set down another brick perfectly aligned. "What are you doing?" the child asked. "I'm laying bricks," said the first bricklayer gruffly. "What are you doing?" she asked the second bricklayer. "I'm putting up a wall," the bricklayer said, carefully placing another brick. "What are you doing?" the child asked the last bricklayer. The third bricklayer turned around, looked at the child, and with enthusiasm and great pride said, "I'm building a cathedral." Some of you may have heard this story before. It's often retold in business seminars and motivational speeches. The moral of the story is that attitude matters. If we have pride and enthusiasm for our work, it will show. No matter what our situation, no matter what task lies before us, we have the capacity to choose our attitude, and the choice we make will determine the outcome of our efforts. The second moral is that when we are able to envision the end result of our work rather than merely the immediate task at hand, we will be better able to overcome unforeseen obstacles that might arise and find the motivation we need in order to persevere. When we shift our attention to the larger goal we're striving to accomplish, we will be inspired to find creative solutions to whatever challenges we may encounter along the way. For the organizational consultant Greg Coker, the story of the bricklayers is more than an apocryphal tale. He believes it's actually based on historical facts. And the image of the cathedral, for him, has become a powerful metaphor and personal expression of purpose. It was during a period of Coker's life when, by many measures, he should have been happy and carefree. He was doing very well in his chosen field, earning a tidy sum as a senior-level executive. He was well connected with business leaders and knew his way around the halls of political power in Washington. But then, after 20 years of climbing the corporate ladder, he found himself questioning the meaning of his work. Though he had attained success, he had no sense of significance. Before he knew it, he found himself in a career crisis. The life he had known fell apart, and he was forced to do some serious reassessment. It was in this context that the story of the bricklayers gained urgency and existential meaning for him. Coker believes the story is based on the experience of the 17th century architect Christopher Wren, who was commissioned to rebuild St. Paul's Cathedral in London after the Great Fire of 1666 that destroyed the city. One day in 1671, while inspecting progress on the rebuilding efforts, Wren encountered 3 men working side by side on the scaffolding, who indeed offered 3 distinct answers to his question, "What are you doing?" "I'm working," said the first. "I'm building a wall," said the second. "I'm building a cathedral to the Almighty," says the third, who was working the hardest and the fastest of all of them. Now, I don't know whether the bricklayer story is fact or fiction, but there is a consensus among historians that St. Paul's Cathedral, which was designed by Christopher Wren and which still stands on the tallest hill in London today, was consecrated in 1697. It's the latest of several cathedrals built there, stretching back to the 7th century. The men and women working on that structure knew they were building upon a foundation that existed long before they were born. But I doubt they could have imagined their work would still be standing there centuries later. I doubt they could have dreamed how the world would change and what kind of lives we live today. I don't know whether Christopher Wren really struck up a conversation with three workers, but I do think the lesson the story conveys is true. There is more than meets the eye in the work we do. Though our attention may be wholly devoted to the single block of brick in our hand and the task of placing it correctly on the soft mortar right in front of us, our work is inescapably linked to the work of others who've come long before us. And the effects of our actions today will continue to assert their influence long after we've left the stage, and in ways we can only dimly imagine. There is always more at work than meets the eye. This is why we must stretch our imaginations. This is why we must be mindful of things unseen. This is why we are right to dream. It was Henry David Thoreau who wrote, "If we advance confidently in the direction of our dreams and endeavor to live the life which we have imagined, we will meet with a success unexpected in common hours." We must dare to dream, and we must dare to follow our dreams. And if we've built castles in the air, our work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now we must put foundations under them. Now, as most of you know, as you've heard, and as you can read in the Sunday Bulletin, we are celebrating our building today. Now I wonder, if Christopher Wren were a visitor today and asked three of us what we are celebrating, what would we say? The first person might say, "We're celebrating the completion of phase 2 of our master plan." The second person might say, "We are celebrating the creation of more space for love and justice, more space to do the important work of our congregation, welcoming all with loving hearts, open minds, and helping hands." If you were the third person, what would you say? I might say, we are celebrating the fact that we have successfully and securely placed one more brick on a wall. We have been building here on the Monterey Peninsula for over 60 years now. 62 years ago, in 1953, this church was founded. At that point, it wasn't really a church. It was called a fellowship. It was started by a small group of like-minded Unitarians who saw the need for a liberal religious congregation here. This was 8 years before the merger of the Unitarian and Universalist denominations. And so we were originally called the Unitarian Fellowship of the Monterey Peninsula. Over the next years, our numbers and our financial commitment grew so that in 1959, we were able to hire a part-time minister. And even though we didn't own a building yet, but were meeting in a variety of rental spaces, we called ourselves a church, and our growth continued. It was not a smooth process. In the early 60s, we were deeply divided, imagine that, about how to deal with the next steps of growth, calling a full-time minister and acquiring a building. For the next few years, the church split into two groups, each with their own minister and their own meeting space, each hoping to build a church of their own. Both purchased parcels of land on which to build. One of them was on Aguajito Road. Actually, they were both on Aguajito Road. And in fact, they were adjacent. The two congregations reunited in 1968, but for the next 10 years, a building of their own remained a dream. Then, in 1978, during the ministry of Fred and Marge Kipe, the first walls of this building were erected with the hands-on help of church members and ministers. This sanctuary is part of that original structure. After what the Monterey Herald called 26 years of hermit crab existence, we moved into our own first building here in 1979. From that point forward, we have been the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Monterey Peninsula at 490 Aguajito Road. And we have continued to grow, improving and expanding our facilities throughout. A footnote. It was not a coincidence that we called ourselves a fellowship. We were part of a concerted effort at the time of the American Unitarian Association to launch new congregations across the country. This was in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. The mid-20th century was a period of amazing growth for Unitarianism, perhaps the most dramatic in our history. During the first 10 years of this outreach effort, 323 fellowships were organized with a total of 12,500 members, and we were among those. The fellowships were marked by greater intimacy, spontaneity, informality, and directness than conventional churches. And because they were lay-led, they offered and demanded more personal involvement and participation, more identification with the group, and a greater sense of responsibility for the whole. In a book on the first 10 years of the fellowship movement, Lael Bartlett tries to describe what distinguished fellowships from Unitarian churches. She concludes by saying, the nearest we can come to a definition perhaps is this: a fellowship is an experience, not an institution. An experience. The fellowship experience is many things, Bartlett says. It's a process, it's a seeking, it's a finding, it is learning, it is living, it is doing, it is being. It is becoming. It is relying on oneself. It is having other warm souls with one on the journey. Some of our visitors can't see it, but to us, this is religion. Unencumbered by outworn traditions and outdated religious language, fellowships set themselves the task of finding deeper meaning and finding new words to give voice to their religious questions. Their religious endeavors were profoundly personal. Their communities were infused with great passion and existential urgency and deep love. That's what this is all about. If someone asks me today what we're celebrating today, I would say we are celebrating this place of love. We each have known many places of power in our lives, whether cathedrals or community buildings. We come here to remember them. We come here to rekindle whatever wisdom, whatever sustenance, whatever inspiration we have found. We come here to share our hard-won lessons, the wisdom we've drawn from places of the Spirit we've known, places of pleasure, places of pain, places of sorrow, and places of love. We come here to share and deepen our love, and to be reminded that there is more love here than meets the eye. We're inescapably linked to those who've come before us, and our actions today will continue to assert their influence long after we've left the stage. We come here to dream, to build castles in the air, and join together to build foundations underneath them. We come to build a more loving world, one brick at a time, remembering that justice is what love looks like in public. This house is the cradle of our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavors. May we humbly join together to lay foundations for an even greater love, knowing that we cannot do everything, but we can do something. May our every word and every deed be a brick that in some small way helps build a better world. Amen.
I'll light the fire. You place the flowers in the vase that you bought today. Staring at the fire for hours and hours while I listen to you play your love songs all night long for me, only for me. Come to me now, and rest your weary heart for minutes. Everything is done. Such a cozy room. Windows are illuminated by the evening sunshine through them. Fiery gems for you, only for you. Our house is a very, very, very fine house with 2 cats in the yard. Life used to be so hard. Now everything is easy 'cause of you. And oh, la 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 is a very, very, very fine house with 2 cats in the yard. Life used to be so hard. Now everything is easy 'cause of you. And oh, I like the fire while you place the flowers in the vase that you bought today.
Can we go to the back?
Give those to the ushers, but
Who are the others?